with Alan, yours, whatever. I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, we're recording, guys.
All right, guys. Well, let's just a quick introduction.
Yeah, you gotta do
right
the introduction.
here,
And man,
I think we can start. Clockwise. I guess. Yeah. My name is Carlos. I'm an Excel craftsman. Love doing things in Excel, and also love sharing the good tips about making the good use of Excel. Up to you. I think down us. All right.
Oz, man, yeah. Oz Du Soleil here, Portland, Oregon, Excel MVP, author. What else? I'm in a Sriracha documentary, and I have nice legs.
You love your spices, your srirachas. Where's your California Reaper? What's it? Isn't there?
It is the California Blazing Chili Farms. Is an independent guy in California, and he makes a ghost pepper sriracha, a Carolina Reaper sriracha, and a Trinidad Scorpion sriracha. All beautiful. The ghost pepper one is a daily one. The other two are tasty, but they're not daily. But you should check him out. He has an Etsy store. That's where I buy the srirachas from, and I got I might have 6 bottles right now.
Wow.
Can't run out. No. All right, whose turn is? All right, Alan Murray.
Oh wait, I think we skipped Lance.
What? Wait, I didn't skip Lance.
Did
What are you doing?
On purpose? On purpose? I don't know.
No, I didn't do it on purpose. just ride the bull, man. Just ride the bull.
Go out.
Alan Murray, UK. Live in a little town called Ipswich, about an hour from London. Computer gaga, and Excel. Anything Excel, I get involved with. Not too keen on the hot sauce. I'll blow up.
Right.
So Lance Rubin, love Nando's, love hot sauce. I even gave Oz a takeaway. I think he was missing his sriracha. So while he was traveling in visiting Melbourne, Australia, where I live, I gave him his little bottle, although he brought his bottle onto the table when I treated him for dinner. So that was great. Financial modeling, wow. We help people make better decisions that are relevant, informed, and purposeful. So it comes back to the decision. We've branched out into analytics, but still our number one favorite tool is Excel. So we open our eyes to many other solutions and technologies, both inside and outside Excel, including add-ins and a whole bunch of different stuff. So, but this is a great, exciting discussion we're going to have, because we're going to talk about the most complex problem and formulas that we've had. So I think I'm really looking forward to the discussion of what you guys have in store.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
So, Lance,
okay, so because there are so many ways that you could define complex. How do you think about that? Because I'm thinking about something. Is you could see, okay, immediately I know the answer, and it's gonna be this big, or I don't know what the hell, and then think about it for days, and then it winds up being this big.
Both. I think it comes down to context. So I think they're both complex for different reasons. So I think it's really, for me, it's what's really tested your brain power and what's really tested you and pushed you beyond Excel, beyond just the formula. It's just like, well, I need to think about what the endpoint looks like before I even start putting anything into Excel, number one.
Yes.
Right? I think that it has to clarify as one of those. It's not one of those that I'm just going to go and bang it out, right? It's actually something which you've actually got to really craft up well and tease out and get really clear in your head. Then I think the next thing is, when you're trying to explain it to someone, you've got to go really slow because they just don't get it. And you've got to do it over and over again. So if you have something that once you've finished, and although the end result may be really simple, how you got there can be extremely complex. And how to link that simple answer to that complex problem, and how you explain that, I think would be part of that criteria. I mean, I'm just, we're just making this up as we go, but I think having both of those aspects of complexity of solution, but also complexity of just problem identification, if you want to call it.
True.
All right. Yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah. Just to add to Lance's points, I think I got this from Sylvia Yuha, who said what may be intuitive to you might not be intuitive for the other person. So you have to take that into consideration. So, and yeah, okay.
Yeah. Everyone's brains are wired differently, aren't they?
Yeah.
What do you think, Alan?
I'm thinking about so many different things. Yeah, Alan, what are your thoughts?
Well, on what Lance said, I'm more of the just bang it out kind of guy. So I might do a bit of planning in my head, but I don't write anything down. I just like get my hands dirty and explore, and see what's happening. And I might break bits of the formula down. I love the F9 key in Excel to calculate elements and just check things are working. But I like to go in and see what happens. But also my trade is that I'm a trainer. So I'm coming from that Excel kind of like educating walk of life. So I like what Lance was saying there is, being able to break that formula down to somebody else. That's the real skill. So if somebody presents a problem, like just put the kettle on, give me a minute.
Yeah.
I'll get stuck in. But then it's explaining that, which I think for me is the biggest skill. Then just trying to
So sometimes as it gets complex, then you start realizing, okay, I might have to break this into parts. But sometimes you can feel inspired, motivated, or enlightened, and then boom, you just get in one hit. I mean, it's often the case for me, but I have seen it happen. So,
Okay. So does somebody have something in mind?
Yeah, I do. It's actually one that I use regularly to explain to people why when someone says to you, and this is the giveaway that it's going to be complex, when they say, I just want this thing to be simply done in this way, can you do it? This should be really simple, can you do it? So they make a judgment that it's simple before you've even started, right? As opposed to saying, we want you to do this and we think it's difficult, then you sort of know it's difficult. But when someone says, oh, it's really simple. So here goes the problem. One of my first clients when I left corporate and started Model Citizen, we were building a financial model, which is an income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. And it was for a fintech company. So it's a financial services technology company. They were providing loans, just like banks do. And basically the way in which they wanted the interest on the loans, so I'll go slowly, the way they wanted the interest on the loans to be calculated was not an input. So they didn't say, we're going to write loans with this interest rate. What they wanted, and also what they wanted is they wanted to use the IRR as an output, but using IRR as really an input. So what they said is they wanted to effectively reverse engineer the interest payments and the principal repayments based on one number, which was the IRR. So for those of you who know internal rate of return, for those that don't, that are listening to this, it's the rate in which you discount cash flows to get a net present value of zero. And it's a great way to compare different projects to each other, which have different cash flows, to say, where should I put my money? Which company should I put my money in? They use that as a measure of return over time. So the first problem was, okay, well, IRR is not an input, number one. It's not. It's a calculated formula within Excel. And let's not even go into the XIRR, MIRR, voodoo. like, let's just keep that to the side. Let's just talk IRR for the moment. We could probably do a whole segment on IRR alone, but this is about reverse engineering. So I think that the moment you get into this reverse engineering territory of using something that's an output as an input, it becomes exceedingly complex. And so what I thought initially was actually quite easy conceptually. So it sounds easy. Well, okay, instead of having IRR as an output, I want to put the numbers in. So in theory, that was easy. And so I started kind of similar to Alan's approach, where sort of, okay, well, let me just try it. Let me just sort of have a goal seek, right? So I said, okay, well, I'll do the calculation. I'll goal seek it. Hang on, that's easy enough. So, I went and started. But then they had different loan portfolios, and the different loan portfolios actually, and they gave me a time period on their average term of the loans. So I sort of had how long those cash flows should go for. And then they said, but interest and principal is not paid uniformly. In other words, it's not a set interest rate for the entire loan period. And it's not a set principal amount for the entire loan period. So one would ordinarily just take, this is the IRR. This is the volume of the loans that we're going to write.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And therefore we need to derive the interest and principal repayments off the back of that. So what happened was that in doing that, I realized that in just using the standard IRR formula to strip out, okay, what's the cash flows that come off the back of that to match that IRR? So I then just said, okay, we'll change these cash flows, goal seek it until it reaches the same IRR as what the input is. So I have those cash flows, but cash flows are a net cash flow. So there's cash in and cash out. And so we have to then work out what components of that is the interest cash flows, what components of that is the principal cash flows, and then apply a curve to the interest and a curve to the principal, because the interest and the principal were not uniform over the entire term of the loan. So we had derived curves, which would actually take those calculations, and we actually had to then get the data from their systems to work out what those derived curves were. So what I mean by a derived curve, if you take what's the behavior of those loans, the current portfolio has a behavior of how the principal was repaid. We need that in the context of a curve. A curve generally in percentage terms. We have 1% in the first month, 2%, 3%. Of course, the entire, when you add up all the periods, should come to 100%. It's kind of like what I call a seasonality curve. When you sell ice cream, you're going to sell more ice cream in summer than you are in winter. If you do that 1/12, which is 8.3% recurring, that's a flat curve or straight line. So you actually have to weight the principal and the interest on the loans based on the data from their systems. So we built all of that, and I went back to my client and I said, look, I know you said this was really simple, but I'm just telling you that this is extremely complex. And if I haven't convinced you already that this is complex, then maybe I need to do more. But I think, he says, no, but it's simple. You're just using the output as an input. Of course, a lot of this I had to then automate. So I had to use a bit of VBA because, I was sitting there doing goal seek for, and basically every month had a new volume of loans. So every month had a goal seek calculation. So I had 36 goal seek macros running for every portfolio, and there were 3 portfolios, right? And so I had to push all those calculations in one go. So I eventually got there and we did it, and then sent it to him. And I said, look, this is not how I would have modeled. This is not the way I would have calculated it. Every other bank and every other organization that writes loans has an interest rate. They know what interest they're going to charge their customer. They know what the cost of that interest is. And maybe the payments, the principal repayments fluctuate, but you don't derive your interest based on an IRR. And I said, actually, IRR in itself is a flawed calculation. It's a theoretical calculation because of reinvestment rates, because of funding rates, and because a whole range of other assumptions that go into an IRR. And if the IRR calculations change, anyway, I'm going off a tangent on IRR. The fundamental thing is, I said to him, this is extremely complex, but I've done it. Here it is. And it took him about a few days to come back to me and says, I don't understand what you've done. And I said, okay, well, you asked me to do this. He says, yeah, but what's this? Why have you got this percentage here? What's that got to do with it? I said, well, remember you told me that you had an interest rate curve because the interest wasn't earned evenly through the entire loan period. Oh, yeah, that's right. I said, well, that's what that's doing. That's taking into account the fact that interest isn't evenly spread. They might forward load the interest. So you might pay a higher rate of interest in the first 6 months of the loan or 12 months of the loan and a lower interest at the back. So they want to weight the risk. There's obviously more risk associated with the loan in the beginning. So they wanted to get their income up front. So okay, but then what's this other percentage? I said, well, that's the principal repayment curve, because you're saying that you want the principal, because some clients want to back end their payments, and you want to back end payments so you can earn more interest if they're paying less principal up front. So both of these have to work in sync for that calculation to then drop out what's the interest payments that go into the financial model. The interest goes into the income statement, the principal goes into the balance sheet, and the balance sheet needs to still balance because it's a three-way financial model, which is your income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. So in the end, it was extremely difficult and frustrating. And I said to him, look, this has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. So if you don't understand it, I appreciate it. Let me take you through it step by step. And then in the end, when I eventually got him over the line and he understood it, he said, oh my God, that is complex. How did you do it? And I said, well, look, it wasn't easy. I had to sort of start and stop and I said, but I think that you're going to come back to me in 18 months, maybe even sooner time, because actually you're going to realize that this approach is not reality. It's a mechanical creation based on an IRR methodology that doesn't reflect reality. And I think, I think you're going to come back and you're going to want me to change it. But, right now you're happy with it. I'm happy because you're happy, but this is not the way I would have done it. And of course, 18 months later, he came back and said, they want to do it now for not 3 portfolios, but for 6 portfolios. And I said to him, please tell me that you've realized that what I did was so complex, you're not going to do that again. And he said, no, you're right. We should just simplify it. So then he just said, can we just throw in Monte Carlo simulation and back solve some other stuff, which is on the write-offs of the loans, which was another whole curveball he took me down. But it wasn't nowhere near as complex as that first rabbit hole. It was certainly challenged me, and I tell the story often to clients who want to sort of push me down that path of complexity and say, I can do it, but more complex doesn't necessarily mean more accurate, and more complex doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. And so you've really got to understand what you're doing, because if you don't understand what you're doing and the pitfalls of what you're doing, and if it's not grounded in reality, then eventually it's going to come out of the wash that it's wrong. And I'm not going to get blamed for that when I've told you up front that you're making certain judgment calls that I think are a big risk. Anyway, that's my opening example.
Quick question, Lance, was that a small size or medium size client?
They were a medium-sized client, but they were going for an IPO. They were actually being listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. So our model, what initially we were engaged to do was just a forecast. And this is the other thing that really I wasn't happy about, was suddenly our forecast model was being used for an IPO. Now, when you use a model to list a company on the stock exchange, there's a whole new element of risks associated with that, which he didn't disclose to me at the time, but sort of threw it to me, halfway through the model build. So it was a medium-sized client, and then eventually, became quite a large organization.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah. I'm kind of I'm impressed about how the when some client wants to go complex, thinking it's sophisticated, but sometimes it's not sophisticated. It's actually, it's less efficient and sometimes more troublesome. And the answer the answer is simpler, I guess. In your case, it seems like it was, but just the client wanted to be, hey, I want to get. I think maybe your client at the beginning, maybe he was how do you say this, swinging between sophistication and complexity, I guess. Not really having what he wanted, I guess.
Well, I think it comes from when they actually do use IRR in their system when they want to price a client's deal. So a client will say, I want a loan for this asset, and I want to pay my principal and interest in this way. And so they put all of that in, and out pops an IRR, and then they work out. So they do price it off an IRR, but again, the IRR is an output in that situation as well. But they use the IRR as what they're targeting. So they basically use it as a goal to work out how they're going to structure the loan each time. So it's highly tailored to the customer. Banks would never do that. Banks would say, here's our loan product, take it or leave it. Banks would not say, dear Mr. Customer, how would you like to repay your loan? How would you like your interest to be structured? We can do whatever you want. So, it's born out of the fact that the offer, the complexity was in the product, and the way that they operated. And he wanted to bring that complexity into the way that it got modeled. And I think that's the point. And you're right, Carlos, it could have actually been done far simpler, but he was stuck to that sort of innovative. So he was sort of, saying, well, we're disrupting the industry. People love that word. I think it's a terrible word. We're disrupting the industry. We're changing the way that banking should be done. We're gonna set the new ground rules. I'm like, yeah, okay. What does this mean for my model?
Okay, all right. So it was in the product. Okay.
Yeah, the product was complex. But
I see.
But also he wanted the model to reflect that complexity. Whereas you could have actually gone down a different path and taken a more blended approach to how you model that. And again, using IRR as a measure comes with its problems.
Yeah. It sounds like the compensation plans when I did commissions. It builds all these compensation, there's incentives and bonuses and triggers and all kinds of things in there, and then the formula winds up being really wild, and then got to test it over and over and over again in different scenarios. Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty neat.
Yep.
Alan, what are your thoughts on that?
Sounds intense.
Yeah, intense. That's right.
I feel like I just had a little bit of a finance lesson as well.
Yeah.
Has anyone used IRR before? Have you used internal rate of return?
I haven't.
I have done cash flows, but I don't think at that level of that gut level that you talked about. I mean, I think just projected ones and but not very complex ones now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a simple formula in Excel equals IRR, open brackets, choose your cash flows, or if it's X IRR, you choose your cash flows and your date. If it's MIRR, which is modified, you choose your cash flows. You don't choose your date because it assumes that they're equidistant and annual, but you choose your reinvestment rate and your funding rate as well for MIRR.
Wow. All right.
I guess for people that use Excel for financial modeling, IRR is probably the most widely used or understood, particularly around investment banks, project finance. Danielle Stein Fairhurst would be familiar with it, and Matthew Bernath and many others in that space would be very familiar with the IRR calculation. But it can be the devil. It can be very dangerous. IRR.
Wow.
It can be very dangerous.
Yeah, stay away from the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want the devil.
Yeah. So how about you, Alan? What's your do you have like a case you want to talk about, like the complex scenario experience?
Not really. I don't have a specific example I don't think it's all off my head. I'm just trying to recount some of the things I was thinking when Lance was talking. But no, I don't have a specific example I can think of at the moment.
What kind of projects have you worked on?
For myself?
Yeah.
Well, I try not to do too much consultancy now.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I get asked a lot of stuff and obviously see a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Days training. But I try and stay away, partly because of what Lance just said, really. I enjoy the training more, but with like consultancy in these projects, they, the client thinks it's an easy job, and I think, oh, you're an Excel genius. This is going to be easy for you, and it's really not. But then, like Lance was saying as well, once you get involved in it, all of a sudden, other things start opening up. And they send a month later, I was like, actually, I've just had an idea. Can you do this as well? Like, what?
Yeah. Wow.
I expect to get down this rabbit hole and
That's what used to happen. You're peeling the onion. You're peeling it and you start crying.
The best analogy I use is when you're building a house, right? You start building a house and you've already started building the second level. And I say, hey, can we just put 3 bedrooms downstairs and an extra toilet? You're like, man, I'm already building the upstairs. I mean, what do you do? You've got to smash the whole house down and start again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, tell you, I keep thinking about the different types of things I've dealt with. Like one time I was on the phone with a client for 2 hours and we were just kind of banging this thing out, as it involved, if they signed up with us at this time and they want to stay with us, then they get billed like normal. But if they started mid-quarter and then they want to leave at the end of the quarter, then we got a prorate. And then we have these billing grids. So depending on the client and if they're staying or not, and then there's billable transactions and non-billable transactions. And then we got to get that client's billing grid over to see what needs to be billed. There's all kinds of little pieces in there. And we cranked it out in about 2 hours over the phone. And I can't think of, like if I had a week to play with it, maybe I could have shrunk it down a bit, but it was what it was. And also the context, he was using me to build a prototype for his in-house developers to build an app for this, a web app. So he needed something he could pass to them and say, this formula generates the right answers, you all. So you know, when you're doing all of your building and testing and everything, bounce it against this because this is right. So that was neat. But then I can think of early in my career, a friend needed to put 14 blank rows between existing rows. She had like 2,000 rows and needed 14 blank rows in between. And it took me about a half a day to think about it. And I remember I had to just get up and walk in the backyard and think, get away from the computer, stop fiddling with it right in the spreadsheet. And then eventually I figured out, you know, number each row and then have all of the numbers in sequence, and then just use a brief VLOOKUP to bring all that stuff over and they'll fall into place, copy, paste his values, boom, done. But she posted in a forum, and there was these VBA guys who were sending her all these codes to loop through, and she said she did VBA. She's an accountant and a bassist. She was deal with some VBA. But the thing that was exciting, the real rodeo, was a client calls me up. They've pulled data out of a database and they're upgrading. So they need to clean up the data while it's out of the first database so that they can put it in the second database. And here's the situation. They had all these students who had to get all of these products, and each product, so it would start, so see how I can do this. It would start with the product ID and then the name of the product, and then like 14 columns back was this everything tied to this one product. And then it would start again and again. And there was maybe 20 products, 14 columns each. And the problem was they were all out of order. They needed to be in order to go into the new database. But then this person, her product 3 was in position 17, but in 17 was product 19, and product 19 had product 2 in its place. And then the next person, it was just madness. And I said, how the hell am I going to get this in order? Because I can't just drag all of this. It's too much. And then even if I were to drag it, like, okay, so I go over here and I drag and highlight and I move and then realize I just grabbed 12, not all 14. So I just start thinking, I had to think about, what does the end look like? I got to start the end. Let me start building this bridge. Okay, so I'm gonna build this in a couple of steps. Can I get Excel? Can I set it up? So I had to slow down, build a small model. Exactly. Always build something simple, like pies and flavors of pies, or you know, whatever. But now I'm dealing with maybe 15 columns of data and 6 rows.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I want it to look like in the end. Okay, so I set up a grid in the middle to where I asked Excel to tell me, where is this thing up here that's supposed to be right here? Okay, that was the one time I used HLOOKUP in my life. But it took me about 6 days to think about how the hell I'm gonna get this stuff straightened out, because everybody's product row and those 14 product number 1 and those 14 rows columns had to be all, and then 2 and then 3 for like maybe 200 students. So yeah, I had to build that middle step to tell me the 5th column behind product 17 is where for this student. It's over here. Okay, so I got all the addresses at a middle step. And then the last step, one formula, boom, boom. It took me maybe an hour and a half. Once I spent 6 days thinking and fiddling, and then about an hour and a half to execute that whole thing. And I sent that back to the client, and she says, you know, sometimes I just open this thing and I just wonder, how the fuck did he do that?
Oh my God, you got to get that out.
Yeah.
That's what she said. She adored that thing. Because she and her team were they didn't know how they were going to do it. And then I told them my price for doing it, and they took a couple days to think about it, and it seemed like I was their only choice. And when I delivered it, ooh.
Now, Oz, was that before Power Query was?
Yes.
Oh.
Before Power Query. Back in the old days when I had to shoe my own horses and everything.
I think what you said about I need to think about the end. I think Power Query makes you really helps you or push you to really think about the end. And that's what I like about Power Query. You need to think about all the steps that you're going to apply. And then
yeah, I like how Power Query forces a person to think whole, like the whole data set, whole columns, whole rows. It forces a cleaner type of thinking and more forethought. So yeah, that was
the thing I want to pick up on what you said, and I think it applies to everyone, right? And including the example that I used. You know, I took one loan, I took one period, and you know, looked at just that and started with one sheet, not in the model. Like I didn't take the big, you know, and just got that one loan to work. I knew what it needed to be in the end, but I just had to bang it out, and I had to sort of just stay just with that before going big. Expanding it.
Yes. Yeah, because all that scrolling around or flipping between sheets or whatever else, going between workbooks and stuff, it's like that stuff starts getting in the way of me just thinking.
Correct.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think that was a good point on building a smaller model or smaller example, whatever you want to call it, which is something I do myself as well. If something's going to be that complex, I teach you to, you know, I'll just go and ride the baby ball first. I'll just warm myself up.
Yes.
Daddy
Yes. I don't want to drive up and unload a whole bull.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing, and you know, I do it in training. Like, there's no unless the situation demands it, like power pivot or something. There's no point doing like big, like fancy examples when people are learning.
Yeah,
it's the same principle. It doesn't matter if it's 10 rows or 10,000. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And if they can get their head around that, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. You add in all the scrolling and flipping around later.
Yeah. That's it. It might not look impressive, but the nuts and bolts are there. It's the same.
Yes.
The mini model thinking. Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta do that. Gotta do it.
Start small and then grow. Yeah.
And when I constantly get asked for help, can you look at my spreadsheet? I need some help. And I will say, if you can send me something small and concise that describes the exact problem, I will look. But if you attach 4 workbooks and 9 paragraphs of stuff in the email, we got to do screen share tutoring, because it takes time to just understand all that stuff. But recently I've had some people that did a beautiful thing. this is where I'm starting and this is where I'm ending. And they distilled it down, and it wasn't full of a bunch of industry jargon that I need to understand. It was the concepts that I needed to get.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's what, when I'm in companies helping and stuff, and, and they'll do like their company like speak, and they're talking about their products or what they do and why they do it as a business, and I'll be like, but just show your, like, this thing that you're trying to improve, like that you say takes you ages, just let me sit with you, let me see what you do. And I'll tell you how you can do it better or how you can simplify it.
Yeah.
But when they're trying to explain their process and stuff, it's, like, I don't understand that. I don't know your company, and neither do I care, really. Show me what you do, because a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet at the end of the day. A cell is a cell. I don't really care what the number means.
Yeah.
And
a marauder is a marauder. Whether he's fat or skinny or tall or short, a man or woman, they marauding. They messing stuff up, and they gonna stop.
When you are building things, I was going to say, when you are building things as well, you also, like when you're solving something for somebody, have to think about how they're going to use it as well. So in Oz was mentioning VBA there, it made me think, because I don't do so much nowadays, but I used to do a lot of VBA stuff, a lot of training, a lot of just like playing around with projects, like learning stuff and that. But when you're producing something for somebody else, sometimes they'd explain their problem to you, and in my brain I'd think, I could do that in VBA in like 5 minutes. But it's not necessarily the right answer, because I want to be able to give them to this and go, look, you want to just use this moving forward without having to think about IT and security, or how you can edit it in 18 months time. Although it's a quick solution, you want the kind of right solution that they can pick up that baton and do the next lap with,
Man, you remind me of a situation where I had to train somebody and she started crying, and my director got involved, and after talking about it, he peeled apart, because we were about to get laid off. So I had an expiration date. I was training this person to do my job. And after he talked with her director and he and I talked, he realized that they were trying to turn this job over to somebody who didn't understand Excel. So then there's all the complexities of the job, all of the regulations, and you got to do this within this amount of time, but if you do this, then that over here, and then some people are exempt, and she had to understand all of that. And that's when my director said, okay, you make a document about all the regulations, about what needs to be done, but you aren't teaching Excel. So I liked how he peeled that apart. And set what my responsibility was. I'm not going to be on this job or available in 2 weeks. I'm turning over my records, and all the rules and stuff for this organization, but I can't teach Excel.
But you can.
Now I can, yeah. But back then, man, I don't remember.
That's another discussion.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I don't remember if you and I talked about this, Carlos, or not, but the time when that lady started crying, because I didn't know.
She was hired from some fancy school, and
no, she didn't start crying. She was agitated. She was angry. But no, this other one where I'm sitting behind her, guiding her through how to do this job, and her director comes behind us and said, "So, how is it going?" And she turned around to look at the director, and these tears were just running. And then they went and called my director. And then that director, she says, "Oz, this can't be this hard. When you get back to Chicago, you're going to take me through the process." Oh, we're going to be on the phone for 3 days. So we opened up the spreadsheet, the raw data, and I said, okay, so the first thing I do is, since people had to do this stuff within 3 years, I go back about 3 years and 3 months, and then I clip off everything beyond that. And then I bring them in, and then I sort them by the organization and separate them by the organization. And about 20 minutes in, she says, "Oz, this is hard." I didn't know it was hard. I saw myself as I was a guy in a cubicle having fun. But yeah, I had this three-month process, 3-day process of peeling this data down. And I liked it. I liked that part of the job. So
That's
Carlos,
interesting.
Do you have,
huh?
sorry,
No,
the
that was
No,
just interesting. When you build something, it's complex, and you send it to the client or to whoever asks you for help. When they say, "Hey, I want to understand what you did," and you know that it's already complex to build, and then the complexity to explain it can also be challenging.
Yeah.
But if you can't explain it, you know that phrase, if you can't explain it simply, it's because you didn't understand it simply.
And I don't agree with that. Yeah. I don't agree with that. But no, because there's a lot of stuff that is just complicated. And how do you explain it? How do I explain to you that we look at some sheet music and I recognize an accidental is trying to keep you in Phrygian mode and not in Aeolian?
Well, yeah, I don't know about that one, but what I'm saying is if the client asks you or to explain it, and if you can't deliver at that point, right, at the explanation, that's what I mean. The client can think, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he did," So it's like, I know what I did, but just, is that those about explaining, about building it?
But see, like that guy who would have me on the phone, a number of times we were on the phone for hours working on a formula or something. And he said he understands enough Excel to guide me. He does not understand enough to do it. And he does not want to. He's a financial planner with all these employees and an in-house development team. He does not want to know all of what I do. But he can, describe to me. Whereas he can't do that with his developers. He know a doggone thing about Python or whatever they write their code in. So I don't know. I hear this stuff about how would you explain it to a 5-year-old? Well, a 5-year-old is not going to get the ins and outs of the First Amendment or all the details around gun control or eradication of smallpox.
Yeah. Well, I do. Well, if for my case, for example, I had this formula for my brother-in-law. He asked me for some help for a VLOOKUP, just a dynamic VLOOKUP. And if I think I'm just gonna cheat a little bit here. Can I share my screen real quick, and that way it'll be more visual for you guys. So this will be the case that I was saying that I built this for him. Am I sharing it or? No. Yes, I am.
Not at the moment.
Not yet. Not at the moment. Okay, now I am. Okay. So this is what he had built, and just look at the amount of rows that he was handling this workbook, and he will do this on a weekly basis. He was telling me that he will go through this VLOOKUP and manually change the range every 8 rows or every 10 rows or 20 rows going down. And I told him, okay. So what he wanted was just a dynamic range VLOOKUP, right? So I built it for him, and this is the formula, right? Might look complex, but it's easy. It's easy to build. I mean, it's easy to do the job. But when he told me, hey, look, I want to understand that formula. How do you build it? I really I started scratching my head. I was like, oh my God, how do I explain now this to him? He's my brother-in-law, you know. So I had to do it yes or yes. So I went with an analogy and say, look, first of all, a VLOOKUP is just like you're looking for a phone number in the yellow pages, right? But the thing that this formula is doing is just looking through many books, many yellow pages books, and depending on the range that you're looking for. So it's, oh, okay. And what is CONTIF? And where he went nuts, and he just like, I think he just like, okay, it's too complex. It was offset. He went like, he couldn't understand offset. And I told him like, hey, it's like fishing, you know, you throw out, yeah, you throw out and then you just weigh and you catch what you want to, like, you know, but you have the option spending the range or making it. But still, like I say, I use analogies, but like he didn't get it. So I was like, man. And then the other point that I wanted to share was just making something that it could be complex into simple. And for example, I have this this chart that I built, and let me see that you can say, are you guys looking at it or not?
Yeah.
Not yet?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so you can look at this chart and say, hey, that it looks simple, right? And it is indeed. I mean, it's really nothing complex, but the person who wanted for me to build it was telling me, hey, look, I want a chart that tells, you know, the historic data and the projection, but I want to have the option to shut off the projection in case I present it to my boss or a PowerPoint. And then I also want the projections to switch off if they get to their quota or they reach their target. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can do it. So, but when I started doing it, I mean, this chart took me maybe like, I think I like 8 hours of building it, just because she wanted that functionality. She wanted to, like, let's say, look, just wanted to switch it off. Just saying, hey, look, this is our historic data, but I also want to like put the projections in case I need to tell my boss, hey, look, next month we're going to hit it. But in case if we don't hit it, like I'm just going to do here, I'm just going to tell, in this case, for example, the October, just to show that we didn't make it. But in those months that we did make it, for example, August right here, then switch off the projection. So the only complex part of this is just this formula right here. Let me just put it white better. So, well, I think gray have more contracts. But I guess now that I look at it, it doesn't look complex, right? But when you're building it, it's like, yeah, you just like nailing and really like just like trying to like test.
Yeah.
And sometimes I grab what your book said, like just break it into pieces. And I broke it into pieces. I broke it into different columns and then combine the formula and then just format it that way. But sometimes like what I'm trying to say or communicate is that things that could be simple can be complex to build. But once you have it, then, you know, that, I mean, you know, then you have the challenge of explaining it or like to the other person, because the other person, it's nice, I guess. It's nice when the other person asks you like, hey, can you explain how you did it? Like, because they want to learn, right? And really you get motivated. It's like, oh my God, he's interested in my work. It's like, But sometimes they just can go rogue and be like, oh no, but or just ask more questions and learn more, which is even better. I get it. I think it's gratifying. But sometimes when they can't get it, I mean, it's just a little bit frustrating. That's my take. I mean,
I like
complex,
it.
simple. Yeah. can be challenging. But
I'm going to pick up on Oz's point because he says if you can't explain it, you don't understand it. I agree. If you can't explain it simply, because sometimes things aren't simple, but surely, Oz, if you can't explain it, and to your point, I know it's difficult to explain it, Carlos, sometimes, but I think that's the challenge with us as trainers, because we all sort of train people to some degree in Excel, and I think that's a skill in its own right, is making the complex simple. And I think that's something that if we can't do that, or if we can't, maybe we just can't do it simply, but we need to be able to explain it. Like your formula that you've written, the only way you could really explain that is by breaking it into its pieces, into its component parts, and then putting it together. So I think I agree. If you're trying to explain all of that complexity in one simple sentence or something, that's sometimes just not possible. But I think we do need to explain how it was created, because it's there. The solution's there. It works. So we either need to spend 8 hours on a call to go through it, or a day or 2 days, but it's going to be painful. But we have to sort of walk that journey with people if they're wanting to learn. And in your case, they said, "Oh, geez, this is really hard. I give up."
Yeah, and so maybe we agree more than we disagree. I struggle with platitudes. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. Now, I hear less is more. What the hell is less is more? I still don't know what that means. This is a platitude. I would rather deal with, here's a real world situation, and somebody asked me to explain something to them, and it's not as simple as was anticipated. It's complex, and I can explain it, but they are going to need a whole lot of prerequisites in order to get it. And that's separate from training. Training is a whole different thing. That's when we've got a relationship where there is a trainer-instructor relationship there, and that is our purpose. But somebody off the street, wanting to know, about this if statement that's 25 levels deep, and it's got is blank and offsets and all kind of stuff in it. No.
Platitudes, huh?
But platitudes. Yeah, no more platitudes.
I think one of the things of complexity.
Platitudes aren't actionable. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's just that it brings a lot of people underestimate Excel. When I sent that formula to my brother-in-law, he was like, holy moly, it's like, how many functions that there exists in Excel? And I was like, oh, there's plenty. And I told him, I only know 12%. And that's just because one day I just downloaded the whole guy and just, I know this one, and it just add up to 12%. And he was like, oh my God, it's like, there's a lot of functions, useful functions there. Yes. And because they see that you solve something complex for them, it really ignites that now some curiosity. And I think that's, I think all of us, in some sort of way we teach, right?
Right. And I like that when it sparks that curiosity. Yeah. And you feel like you're now indebted to, like, okay, now I have to teach this person, because if not, it's like, it's like, I don't know. It happens to me all the time. So, and sometimes I still feel like, do you learn it? Like, and I think 50% their lines like, yes, I learned, but I know, at least they grasp the core concepts. I hope so, at least. Yeah.
Just to finish off quickly, because I know we're almost done, but can I share my screen quickly to give you a less is more example, Oz, to help you round out that understanding?
Well, here's the thing. When I hear less, I hear that in the music world as a bassist, less is more.
Sometimes less.
What? It's not actionable. How is less is more actionable?
Well,
Let me,
yeah. Before you jump, Lance, like for example, I always say Excel. You can do a lot with. I mean, you can do a lot. You can have a lot of impact just using Excel. You know, you don't have to go machine learning for some cases, or like or artificial intelligence, or some other tools, really complex and sophisticated tools, to get the same result that you're looking for, and you can do it with Excel. You know,
Some
so
people overcook the problem, you know.
yeah.
You don't need all that stuff. You're overthinking it.
Overthinking, yeah. So overthinking, and then that could be some like less is more. Like you think less, and you still create more. You know.
What it comes down to, and you say, and the music is, does the music feel good? Are people dancing? Okay,
Yeah.
because you can take a bassist like Les Claypool, who plays a whole lot of notes and the music feels good. Then you can take somebody who plays really sparse, like Tina Weymouth of the Talking Heads, very sparse, highly sampled bassist. Where is the less is more? You
But
know,
that's
it's,
relative. Music is very relative. It's
well,
very music is very. I mean, good
so
music.
much.
Yeah.
Right. It's a matter of taste. It's a matter of a lot of things. It's how a person hears and feels music. And one thing, when I was listening to Rocksteady by Aretha Franklin, and Chuck Rainey is the bassist, and now that bass line sounds so busy. And then when I try to replicate, and I said, man, that guy's cooking. He's doing a lot. Then I learned how to listen and realize there are parts where he's doubling the organ. So I couldn't listen to the bass line stand alone, because it did sound like, man, that guy is in charge. But no, different things have different purposes. So he like fattened the music by doubling the organ at that place. So where is the less is more? If you look at the notes, there's a whole lot of notes there. Now go to Chuck Rainey and tell him less is more.
It's an interesting
But I think
term.
in the Excel world around less is more, I think it's very relevant. I co-authored an article with Jennifer Harrison on formula construction and formula tips. And so, the finger rule, like you're better off breaking it into steps and having those than really having a really complex, deep nested if statement. So I think, breaking it out, yes, they still have lots of formulas, but, having less of a formula is actually more valuable than having this really big formula, jammed into one formula bar.
Okay. Yeah. And then I would ask, for what? It's better for what?
It's better to audit. It's better to understand. So if you've got flags, let's say there's certain things that happen in certain time periods, and you have time series and you want a flag. So people want to understand, why did this number suddenly pop up? And they've got to read this long formula. But if you have conditional formatted flags, which actually says, well, because that flag was triggered because they've gone beyond their time of that they were a customer, or whatever the trigger is. So I think when you break out the bits of the formula, rather than having it nested inside the formula, then you can get transparency. Primarily is probably the biggest benefit.
Yeah, sure. And I agree with you. And they're like you painted a context around it. And then I think about one formula I wrote that I learned maybe 10 years later to rewrite much cleaner. It was 25 nested if statements, because I needed to see if times overlapped in a column of 25 times. So somebody says they did something this time to this time, and then 5 rows later, this time to this time. How can I detect if there's any kind of overlap? All right, so I had a 25 level nested if statement, and it worked.
Sometimes
Now-
you got to do what you got to do, Oz.
Right. Yeah. So, and there again, I'm telling the context, the story around it, because the thing in and of itself is not the thing. And this is,
Correct.
I picked this up when I was riding the bus to work one morning. And I see these nicely dressed people picking up dog turds. And I thought to myself, it's the context. It's not that these people get dressed up to go to the park to pick up turds. No, it's the context of responsible dog ownership. There we go. So a big nasty formula or something hidden way off in some hidden column or hidden sheet somewhere. Does it matter? Does it matter for what?
Hey, Oz, there's another plateau for you. It depends,
Yeah, it depends.
It
The
depends.
answer to everything, it depends.
It depends.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Now, Alan, you brought me some curiosity. I mean, you do more learning, but you were doing consulting, right?
Yeah, I have done or do, but yeah, nowadays it's just try and focus on the training.
Education
Yeah.
side of things.
I'm always
Now-
fixing people's problems and that kind of stuff, but I
Oh,
don't
okay,
get
okay.
involved in like big projects.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But at some point, do you got, let's say, just tired or sick of the complexity of consulting? Of every project is different, So
Yeah, a little bit. So it can be interesting, but I just don't think because it takes my time away from other things
yeah,
and stuff.
Yeah.
And I enjoy a lot of what was spoke about in this session. I enjoy well, first of all, I enjoy like educating and explaining things to other people and seeing them
yeah,
like
it's
progress and
gratifying.
stuff. And I just feel better about if somebody gives me something to do, I could build it for them and then give it to them, and then they might come back a year later and ask me to do it again. So yeah, I'll take your money. Or I could explain to you how to do it and then watch you go off on that camel.
Yeah.
And I take more joy in knowing that person's, has got those skills to be able to fix it themselves and
Yes,
product,
empowering
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Click this button, you'll be all right. It's like,
Yeah.
Until next time, yeah.
Yeah. You got to hand out the swords, right? Instead of, so you got to say, here you go.
Oh my God. Is that a real one, Oz?
Yes, it's real. It's got an edge on it and everything.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Trims his beard.
Do you need a license to have one or no?
No, man. No.
Okay.
Would you need a license in Lima to have a sword?
No, not neither, but
Okay.
it just depends on
So you could wait.
maybe there could be some issue about the history where you got it, it belongs to the state, because here it's very like let's say they try to, since there's a lot of history in Peru because all the archaeology, they could like maybe question hey, where you got that? Maybe from the Spaniards colonies,
Okay.
You stole it. Like,
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's interesting.
But you could have one on your belt when you go to grocery store. Nobody.
That's the thing, though. If you bring it to the superstore and a cop sees it, and if it looks very legit, they can't stop you. It's like, where you got that? What is that? Like,
Wow. All right. Looks like Alan has something to say.
Yeah.
Me? No.
No, okay, all right.
Oh, if you can share, Lance, if you can share that link about that article that you were talking about the formulas, and if you guys want that chart, then I can send it to you. That's a demo work.
Sorry, my home internet bombed out. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, okay,
man.
okay.
Oh man.
Okay. So.
All right.
Everyone's
guys.
It's a good conversation. Yeah. Yeah. In the middle of the night.
It's just got 9 a.m. for me.
Jeez, man, it's 1 here.
It's interesting
1:12.
that Lance is about to go to bed in 3 hours, and we are about to go to bed right now. Just the world.
Yeah.
The world. Now, I have a question though. If for Lance, let's say if I take a trip to, let's say that in the years to come, they make for me from Peru to travel to Australia. Like, I know maybe it's 12 or 18 hours, but let's say that they shorted it to 9 hours, right? Or maybe 5, if possible. How would that work? Like I'm always intrigued by how would that work? Would I be going a day before or a day forward that quick?
Yeah, well, it depends how many time zones you cover. So Australia, there's I think there's 3 different time zones in Australia alone. It's kind of like East Coast and West Coast in the US as well. So depending on the country, so we have parts of our country that agreed to do what's called daylight savings, and so the times actually change between the seasons, and there are other parts of the country which don't. So like for instance, right now, Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria, so it's Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, are all aligned. But the moment we go to summer, Queensland don't observe daylight savings, so they're behind us for an hour. But so when you cross over multiple time zones, I flew to South Africa once where, when I left in the morning and I flew, by the time I arrived in South Africa, it was in the evening, but people were already in sleep in Australia. So I'd effectively lost time, but also traveled. But the thing is, when you go back, you gain it again. So you don't really technically lose it. No. It's kind of, but it's just different. Because if you want to take the time, like someone says, oh, why don't you just go steal the time somewhere else and go bring it back? Well, you don't. you can't do that. Yeah. Work that way. So I think when you start traveling internationally, you start, when I do travel, I have a watch with multiple time zones, because it can be really tricky when you're trying to communicate with different people in different countries.
Yeah. And when I went to Brisbane, I did not have a Friday that week. I left Portland early Thursday evening and arrived in Brisbane Saturday morning.
Yeah.
But it was Friday in Portland, right? But for me, it was already Saturday in Brisbane.
Yeah, because they were already ahead in Saturday, and then by the time you landed, it was,
Yeah. So, all right. Anything else? Anything else we want to talk about? Anybody need any life advice?
Have you got good life advice, have you?
I can try.
If you guys, I don't know if you know this. I mean, if you manage this term in English, but Kabbalah, have you guys heard of it before? Kabbalah?
Yeah,
I have. It's a Jewish mysticism.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting stuff. I mean, pretty cool tips about life there.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
All
right then.
Okay, gentlemen. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Have a good morning. Whatever it is. Evening here, evening there, and morning for you, Al. So all the best. Stay safe. Stay indoors, and let's keep talking.
Yep. All right. Cool.
Let's keep in touch. Yeah, keep in touch.
Right.
All right, guys. Take it easy.
See you guys.
Take care, Alan. Take care, Lance. Oz. Take care.
Cheers.
Keep excelling. Bye-bye.
Keep excelling.
Keep excelling. Yes. Take care, guys.
See you.
Good talk. Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
Real quick. You want to post it on your channel or? I don't know.
I'll send it to you to post. Yeah.
Okay, sure. We transfer, right? I don't know how big it's gonna be, but we'll.
Yeah, it might be a bit big. I'll share it via Dropbox.
Sure, perfect. Okay, no problem. All right, man. Take it easy.
Cheers, Carlos.
Bye. Take care. Nice meeting you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.